Hello, class. Today for science, we're going to continue our lesson on the forms of energy. Our target for today will be I can describe the different forms of energy and identify Isaac Newton. So today we're going to review everything we went over last week before we move on to our next form of energy. Okay, so let's begin. So defining energy. Remember, energy is the ability to cause motion or create change. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Energy can be transferred from form to form. And the different forms of energy are mechanical, sound, electrical, heat or thermal, and light energy. Then remember last week, we've been discussing mechanical energy. Mechanical energy is an object's kinetic and potential energy combined. So if you guys don't remember, kinetic energy is the energy of motion. Anything moving has this kind of energy. And then you have potential energy, which is energy that is stored in an object. When an object is in motion, its potential energy is released. And we have forces. Forces are interactions between objects, such as a push or a pull. A push is the force that moves an object away from something, like when you push a plate away. Then a pull is the force of bringing an object closer. And then you have friction. Friction is a force that restricts or stops the movement of two solid objects sliding along each other. So if you guys remember last week, we were talking also about Sir Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton is considered one of the most important scientists in history. His research would go down as one of the most important works in the history of science. Newton not only introduced the theory of gravity, but defined the principles of modern physics. The three biggest things Isaac Newton was known for was the theory of gravity, the laws of motion, which became the basis for physics. That's what we were discussing last week. And a new type of mathematics called calculus. So last week, we talked about the laws of motion, and there were three laws of motion. You had the first law of motion. The first law of motion says that any object in motion will continue to move in the same direction and speed unless forces act on it. Then you have the second law of motion. Second law of motion states that the greater the mass of an object, the more force it will take to accelerate the object. Then the third law of motion. The third law of motion states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you guys remember from last week, the laws of motion with the first law of motion, basically an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted by an unbalanced force. Think about a soccer ball. If you leave a soccer ball there and don't touch it, it's not gonna move unless something like the wind or your foot or something has to touch it to move it. And you got the second law of motion. Second law of motion states that the greater the mass of an object, the more force it will take to accelerate the object. In other words, the larger an object is, the more effort it will take to make it go faster. And then you have the third law of motion that states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This means that there are always two forces that are the same. Okay, guys, so that was a review from last week. So for today, I have one more video on Isaac Newton's law of motion, which is a short one, I promise. And then I have a short quiz for you to take afterwards. I hope you guys enjoy the video.